Now that we know how to store and read and print decimal numbers, we're finally ready to talk about division in C. There are actually two separate division behaviors in C. One of them is called integer division, and it's amongst integers with an integer result, and the other one is a floating point division for decimals. Let's start with integer division. So in order to look at an example, let's simply print out the result of 5 divided by 2. Let's print out 5 divided by 2 equals %d. And then over here, we put 5 divided by 2. So this simply prints out the result of 5 divided by 2. And we all know what that is. 5 divided by 2 is supposed to be 2.5. But we're talking about integer division with an integer result. So what's an integer result when you divide 5 by 2? It turns out it simply cuts off the decimal places. So the result of this division is going to be simply 2. Let's check it out. Let's compile and run this code. And indeed it says 5 divided by 2 equals 2. So we have to be very careful when doing an integer division because we have to remember that an integer is always going to be the result. Next, let's check out floating point division. And so again, let's look at an example. Let's look at printf 5.0. So we indicate a floating point by simply adding the 0.0 after the 5. 5.0 divided by 2.0 equals, and then we're going to print it out as a float, or as a double. And here we put 5.0 divided by 2.0, indicating that we want a floating point division. When we run this, first compile and then run, indeed the result is correct. It prints it as 2.5 with 6 decimal places altogether because that's the default when you're printing with %lf without specifying how many decimal places you'd like to print. Now what happens when you actually mix things up? What if I print 5 divided by 2.0? Let's check it out. And we should probably add a new line here and a \n here as well so that all the outputs are nicely separated on lines. So we want 5 divided by 2.0. Which is going to win, the integer or the double? Let's compile and run. And the double one. So automatically C assumed that you really meant a floating point division and it did 5 divided by 2 correctly. Let's check out a few more combinations here. So what if we did 5.0 divided by 2? 5.0 divided by 2. And again, let's compile and run. And again, this is correct. So as long as one of the numbers is a floating point number, the other one is automatically assumed to be a floating point as well, and a floating point division happens. So that's nice to know. What happens if we accidentally print 5 divided by 2 with a different format specifier? So what if we actually put our LF right there instead of our %d? Let's find out. I compile, and whoa, there's an error message. It says on line 4 in column 32, so that's right here where that format specifier is, a format specifies type double, but the argument has type int. So that %lf says that I'm trying to print a double, but because I typed 5 divided by 2 here on the right, C knows that's an integer division with an integer result. So I'm trying to print an integer with a double format specifier, and that's not good. Notice that this is only a warning and not an actual error. So in theory, you could actually still run this code, but it's not good. You should never ignore these warnings because something is going to go wrong. Now, it turns out Codecast is a really friendly tool, and it still tries to make this as right as possible. So when you now run this, it actually types out that 5 divided by 2 equals 2.00000. So it printed the result as a double. That does not necessarily happen with other tools. Other tools that are the real world tools might actually print a completely incorrect result. So let's go back and edit and get rid of the %lf here, make that back being a %d because that's more correct. Similarly, if you were to try to print a double using an integer format specifier, you get a similar error message. It's a warning that instead of %d, you really should have used a double format specifier such as %f. Now, %f is actually a floating point format specifier for a floating point data type, which is a data type just as double, but it doesn't use up quite as much memory as the double data type, and it has less significant digits that are actually correct. So we typically use the double data type, but we will learn about the float data type later on as well. So let's not even go there. Let's go back to editing and make this correct. Make this back to being an LF so everything runs properly. So this is how division works in C using numbers. We'll next see how to employ variables in our divisions.